Big moves could be coming to the world of motorsports. CNBC has learned that Apple close to finalizing a U.S. media rights deal with Formula One that's expected to be worth, if you're ready for this, $140 million per year. Our own Alex Sherman spoke to Apple's senior VP of services, Eddie Q, about the future of racing.
I think in the U.S., everyone talks about how big Formula One is now. And the reality is because it was nowhere. And so if you're nowhere, it's gotten huge. But the truth is, it's not huge yet.
It's only about 1 million people or so that watch a given race.
That's right. And so when you compare it from a sports point of view, that's pretty tiny. So there's a huge potential for the sport.
Alex Sherman joins us now. Obviously, they did a great film on F1 with Brad Pitt. This is the real version.
That's right. Congrats on the book, Andrew. Start off with that.
Thank you, sir.
1929. The plug for you. Yeah, look, I spoke with Eddie. They showed a big clip of the movie to start off with because nominally, that's why Eddie Q was at this Motorsport Network event that was yesterday at the Classic Car Club in New York, where I spoke with Eddie. But of course, the elephant in the room is that there has been a lot of reporting done by myself and colleagues of mine that say Apple is, very close to signing this media rights deal with F1 that would add all of the U.S. rights to every F1 race to the Apple TV platform. It's not called Apple TV Plus. Now it's called Apple TV. Apple made that change earlier this week. So that would add Formula One racing to MLS, which Apple already has, and a sliver of Major League Baseball. And so I asked Eddie, what interests you about Formula One? And basically what he said to me was that he still feels like F1 is a buy low candidate. And that's really interesting because if you rewind the clock 12 years ago or so, NBC was paying like $4 million a year for F1. As you said in the intro, Apple is now going to pay something like $140 million. So for him to think about racing as still a buy low candidate in this country after the value has increased already by that amount of money, I think that shows you where certain executives' minds are when it comes to emerging sports. I mean, you can throw women's sports into that too. There has been a huge media rights increase for women's basketball, but there are still many executives that say, look, we think that this thing is a buy low candidate.
Alex, I love that. Was almost like Austin Powers, Mike Myers, $4 million.
Yeah, that's right. I tried. I should have
Let me
done
ask you
this.
this.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. F1 is one thing. There's another thing you spoke to Eddie Q about, which was the broader world of sports rights that are taking place at this moment.
Yeah. So, to some degree, I think it's a little bit antithetical that when you look at Apple sports rights and you see Major League Soccer, Formula One, and a little bit of Major League Baseball, that is not a dominant sports rights portfolio. And you think of Apple as the biggest, the best in everything. And look, they're not always the first, to be fair. They weren't the first phone. But ultimately, they come out as this dominant player. And yet, their stated sports strategy is one where they want all the rights they can get for a sport. In other words, every F1 race is going to be on Apple. Every major in the United States, every Major League Soccer game is on Apple already globally. Well, that's not going to happen for the NFL or the NBA or Major League Baseball. Those leagues like to carve up their rights. And so here's what Eddie Q told me about why he's content still investing in sports, even in that world.
If we can do the kinds of things that we want to do, yes, the answer is yes, we do. If we can offer things that are unique and special that lets us really do the level of differentiation, innovation that we would like to do, then the answer is yes. But these things are, they're complicated.
So basically what he's counting on is the leagues at some point coming around to Apple's vision. Now, we already know definitionally that's not going to happen anytime soon because the major rights are locked up for many years to come. But at the very end of our interview, Eddie Q said to me, look, we're Apple. We're going to be around for a long time. I think it was a little dig at some of the traditional media companies that may not be on a solid footing. And his bet is that ultimately if it's 10, 15, 20 years from now, the leagues are going to clue into Apple's vision that it makes more sense to sell all of your rights to one platform than to carve them up to 4 or 5 different streaming services.
Alex, let me ask you a different question, which is, and maybe this is going to feel like a curveball of sorts, in terms of what you think Apple's ultimate ambition is with Apple TV. And it comes, I mean, the question comes at a time when clearly Paramount has ambitions to merge, for example, with Warner Brothers, and whether you think Apple might either get involved in that or try to beef up its own content offerings by trying to make some kind of deal with others.
Yeah, you know, this has sort of been a long-running joke. Before I covered media and sports, I covered mergers and acquisitions, and people used to always ask me, do you think Apple's going to buy a company? And I was like, oh, you asked me the Apple question. Well, I have a formula for that. My formula is, will Apple buy X? Arrow? No. Because Apple just doesn't buy anything. I mean, I think Apple's biggest acquisition still is a $3 billion acquisition of Beats that it did a decade ago, in terms of a full company at least. Right. So I don't think Apple will buy Warner Brothers Discovery. They've never shown any interest in buying any sort of legacy media asset. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think their ambitions are just the same kind of as sports. We're going to be around for a while. We'll take this thing slow. And in 10 or 15 or 20 years, we will emerge as this really robust business. But it's going to take a long time for us to accumulate the library and accumulate the sports rights to make us a dominant player in the media industry.
Fair enough. Alex, I want to thank you for bringing us that interview. Fascinating. And be sure to sign up for his CNBC Sport newsletter. And he'll be sharing his full conversation with Eddie Q there in next week's edition.